This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Oh my God!
Welcome, everybody, to the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 86. On today's episode, lots of good stuff for you. Got an update on Cesaro and a possible injury. Batista shoots on WWE and their creative, as well as some hype about AEW that we're going to get into. This week's episode, we're also going to have a little bit of an AEW conversation about what's going on with Fyter Fest. Of course, we're going to do our new segment, which is the quick review of wrestling history. This week, we took a listener's suggestion and we worked it into the program. So we're gonna review July 6th, 1998's WCW Nitro's main event with Hollywood Hulk Hogan and Bill Goldberg, as well as review parts of SmackDown and parts of Raw. We're going to discuss Super Showdown, and when I say we, I mean us, and by us, I mean the one, the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
A podcaster not past his prime, I'm the DOC. I'm ready to talk about Super Showdown.
What a shit show that was.
I actually watched it.
Did you want your money back? Did you want your time back?
Yes, I wanted my time back.
These were the questions I asked a guy I work with as he told me that he's like, I watched Super Showdown. I was like, why? I was like, did you want your time and your money back? He was like, it was so bad.
I don't understand sometimes because a lot of the reasons why people do things, I guess it's just for show. It's honestly just for show. WWE said, and I think they just said it to make the Saudis feel good about paying $25 million or so for this show. I'm like, what the hell happened for this situation? I'm just like, this show is awful. I mean, it's a glorified house show, but when you put the expectation on the show that it's going to be damn near WrestleMania, I just think that potentially then you're lessening the value of WrestleMania if that's what, you know, the card produced. But there were some good matches. I definitely enjoyed Triple H, Randy Orton, brought back old memories. I liked a lot of what I saw, but it was a house show. It wasn't anything spectacular. It wasn't anything crazy. I mean, it was so hot. That was the narrative throughout the whole show, was the fact that these guys were wrestling in damn near 100-degree heat. Yeah. And then the choice of the main event is not good. I think Seth Rollins should be really upset that he's starting off the show and you have Undertaker Goldberg closing it out.
So hold on. Here's the thing. I totally agree with you on that, right? But this is the thing. So if you're not going to be the main event, and they're not going to main event Seth Rollins over Undertaker because of what Undertaker has meant to WWE, right? So,
but then you cheapen the Universal Champion, and Seth Rollins deserves to have a push. He's a great wrestler.
And I totally get that. But if you're not going to start the show, you want to be what is called the curtain jerk. So you want to be the first one. So either you're going to be first or you're going to be last. It's one of those two, and then everything else gets lost in the middle. So if you're not going to be one, or if you're not going to be the main event, you want to be one. So at least they let him be number one. I get what you're saying, and I totally understand what you're saying, but for Seth Rollins, he was the curtain jerk, and that's what it was.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'm sorry. I did not mean to interrupt.
No.
What you were saying,
I respect that. I think first is not awful. But he also started WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. So to start Super Showdown, Brock Lesnar does come in eventually when Baron Corbin is all upset about the loss, and he kind of does damage to Seth Rollins. But Seth Rollins gets his revenge on Brock Lesnar, which is fine. I thought it was cool. But then midway through the show, the crowd really, you have a great match going on, and the crowd is dead. It's crazy. The crowd kind of was just sitting on their hands. And then what WWE did, I think, which was a mistake, was they panned to this far end camera, made the arena look really empty. And it was like, wow, there's a lot of empty seats for this show. You looked at it and you said the crowd in and of itself wasn't as into a lot of things as you thought they would be. But in the end, you judge a pay-per-view by the top-end matches, and you get to the main event, and it's Goldberg-Undertaker. The entrances are great. The stare-down is great. And then within a couple minutes, Goldberg goes into the ropes. And if you're a wrestler, if you pay attention to that move, when the wrestler goes through the turnbuckle, you're supposed to hit the pole there with your shoulder, not with your head.
Not with your head.
But I can't give blame to The Undertaker for that. Now it goes into the question of what happens, because Undertaker and Goldberg wrestle a little bit. It's okay. There's a move that's made by The Undertaker. It looks okay. But then when Goldberg hits a spear, it looks like after that, Goldberg blew out. He just was tired and exhausted, which led to a couple botches. And the last 90 seconds, you don't really want to see, because basically it's just two professional wrestlers dropping each other. You had the tombstone from The Undertaker, not good.
Here's the thing. So let's talk about the tombstone real quick. So The Undertaker goes for the tombstone. And I don't know if you can put this on The Undertaker or you can put this on Goldberg. I think you have to put it on Goldberg. His head slips out.
Yeah.
And basically Undertaker sandwiches his head into the mat. But this isn't on The Undertaker. This is Goldberg not protecting himself. So This one is also on Goldberg. The move is being done by The Undertaker.
And then most people are, when I read about it, are critiquing the jackhammer on both people, because Undertaker's legs were not straight up in the air like they're supposed to be, and Goldberg did not position himself well to have balance, so that basically he drops The Undertaker, what looks like, on his head.
Yeah.
And it was a botch fest, and then the match ends. And so I look at it and I say, okay, it went too long. The match in of itself, I do give Goldberg credit for continuing with a possible concussion, but at this point in time in 2019, you're potentially putting a lot of people at risk. You could have just did a false finish. You could have just did something else. I think it's incumbent upon the ref and the manager in the back to stop that match.
WWE step in
there
at some point, right?
Easy. You could do. Undertaker could just snap. He gets pissed. Goldberg does a move that he doesn't like, grab a chair, and end the match. It's Saudi Arabia. No one's going to care. I just think that allowing that last 90 seconds to happen is a major mistake. It should have, at this point in time, been predicted. After that spear, Goldberg was wobbling around. He looked like he was out of it. I don't know what the referee's looking at. Everybody saw it. And then to let the match happen, there's been two schools of thought on it. People are giving Goldberg credit, those in the industry saying, look, he continued, he gave us a match, and things like that. And then you got the fans and a lot of people on Twitter who are just like, that was a botch fest, and that was terrible. Undertaker's past his prime. Goldberg should retire. This is terrible. I fall in the middle where I say, I just think that WWE should have did a better job of protecting their wrestlers. This should not have ever been allowed to happen, especially in 2019. If a wrestler and performer, because every wrestler and performer, if they're really worth it, is going to want to continue. They're going to want to perform. But to perform in a wrestling ring, you got to be on. You can't be altered. And I think the referees have to do a better job of paying attention to that, because if you don't, you could paralyze somebody. That's the reason why. So in the end, it brought down Super Showdown. I really liked the Triple H Randy Orton match. I thought that Triple H did the right thing by putting over Randy.
That was probably the best match on the show.
That was it. And these shows, you can be entertained by it, but in essence, it's just a bunch of hype. Mm-hmm. There's not going to be major storyline angles that play out where if you miss it, it's like, oh my God, CM Punk returned. No, nothing major is going to happen. It's just a show to cash a check, and it's a la carte. These Saudi guys can say, hey, I want to see this, and if they can make it happen, they will. 50-man battle royal, come on now.
Which was 51, actually.
Yeah.
They couldn't even count right. But here's the thing. These shows, this is why I don't like them, right? They're very... like you said, it's a la carte, right? You kind of watch what you want to watch. You don't have to watch the whole thing. It is long. It is drawn out. They weave this storyline, which is usually poor, into what we watch on Mondays and Tuesdays. All right. So it's there's a lot of interference with what goes on with this one-off glorified house show. And it doesn't need to be that way. Like you said, it's a la carte. Pick and choose what you want to watch. If WWE wants to do this, treat it like it's a house show. All right? And the house shows, the great thing about the house shows, and all the guys, for the most part, love the house shows. Because at the house shows, they have the freedom to do what they want to do. The matches aren't overly scripted. They're out there trying new stuff. They have basically a rough idea of what they want to do. And they get to go out there and they get to try different things. Do that with these Super Showdowns. Do these with these glorified house shows, which are the Saudi money.
Yeah,
right. That's all it is. It's just a check to cash for WWE. You don't have to overly script these, and you don't have to have it be this gigantic production that gets weaved into Monday Night Raw and into SmackDown. You don't have to do it, and I think this leads to to a great question that me and you were kind of kicking back and forth that you had posed in part of our show prep. Who's the face of WWE?
Who's the guy?
Who's the one?
And you would think, because he's got the Universal title, that it's Seth Rollins, but you keep not putting him in the main event of big-time shows,
right,
and you highlight other guys, and I just think that a guy like Seth Rollins should be the guy, but then every time Brock Lesnar's there, it seems like he's like, oh my God, Brock's here. And I do think that it was kind of a little bit of a, getting over situation where they let kind of Seth Rollins destroy Brock Lesnar there at Super Showdown, so that was good. But I just think that right now, Seth Rollins needs to do just a little bit more to put that company on his back. And I think he's starting to do that where, he's getting more airtime. He was on Raw, the first person in the ring, and then he also was in the last match. So I think they're starting to do that. But I just think that there's better guys that are potentially more over. I think really close now, Braun Strowman's getting there. Braun Strowman's a guy that you could make the face of the company. But Seth Rollins has the chance. I think he's the guy. But for me personally, if you shine the light on AJ Styles, I think he can carry and deliver. He can put on a match with anybody. He's the guy that could be the face, but unfortunately, he's a little bit older, and from time to time, he's going to be nicked up. So right now, Seth Rollins has to be the guy, but he needs to do a little bit more. I don't know if it's maybe delivering better promos, having that signature moment. Right now, he's there. We're used to him. We're used to him being part of the Shield, but something's off. I'm not sure what exactly it is, but something's not there yet.
Do you think that we find out who it is, or whoever it is kind of rises to the top after we have Super Showdown? Because again, Super Showdown mixes everything up. It messes up your storylines with Raw, messes up your storyline with SmackDown, and they have to try to cram everything into this show.
You mean after Stomping Ground, this next pay-per-view?
Yes. So what will end up happening is you have Super Showdown take place, right? So now you've got Raw and SmackDown start to get a little bit more of their equilibrium back. You're going to have this upcoming pay-per-view, which will be next Sunday. And then after that, things will kind of start to even out and balance out. So AJ Styles comes back in. You've got Seth Rollins basically doing what he's doing, but you get to see him kind of develop whatever storyline he's working in a little bit more. Braun Strowman's doing what he's doing. We've also have Samoa Joe working his new storyline. So basically what you're having is WWE is like, cool, we're going to cram 8 pounds of shit into a 5-pound bag, and it's going to spill over and it'll turn into 10 pounds of shit because we have nothing but Super Showdown, which is absolute crap. That'll all kind of peter itself out. It'll even itself out. And then what happens is you have WWE kind of getting back to doing what it's supposed to be doing and telling the storyline that it wants to tell, moving away from what Super Showdown was.
Now I want to get your reaction to this because John Cena was asked this question, what should happen in terms of the fact that John Cena might have been the last really top guy. And he said, you know what, I see the WWE not creating a superstar top guy. He sees them potentially having a plethora of guys that just rotates, like Seth Rollins. Right now, you'd say the top guys are Seth Rollins, Braun Strowman, Roman Reigns, and Kevin Owens.
You have guys,
but it's not a top guy, no face of the company, because eventually speaking, you probably assume that Seth Rollins in the near future is probably going to have a feud where he loses the belt. I don't think he's going to carry it for a year. And so I think that what WWE and some of the top complaints that people have is you don't really have that big name brand guy that we go, damn, if he comes to Detroit, I want to see him. Right now, if WWE came to Detroit, it'd be kind of like, if I got a free ticket, I'd go. But there's nobody I absolutely have to see outside of AJ Styles, and I'd probably want to see AJ Styles, Seth Rollins. Other than that, I think what WWE is lacking in is creating a top superstar guy, whereas in the Attitude Era, it was The Rock, Triple H, Stone Cold. You had Mick Foley. You had 4 or 5 guys that interchanged in storylines that you wanted to see.
Dude, you just named 5.
Yeah, exactly.
But no.
That's the problem. I think that's the biggest problem is that you're not creating stars big enough to draw. And I think the shows are okay, but Seth Rollins is great. He's going to emerge as one of the top guys. But right now, the way in which he's being utilized, his opponents aren't thrilling.
WWE's roster has never been deeper than it is right now.
Yeah.
You have a ton of talented guys. You book them poorly, and you don't give enough guys enough light to shine because you do a lot of Control-C, Control-V, where you copy and paste the same storylines over and over every week. And you build this to a pay-per-view or to a pay-per-view event where in that pay-per-view event, again, Control-C, Control-V, what you just had for 4 or 5 weeks. And again, you're not allowing young guys to get over. I mean, Ricochet is a great talent. We've seen Ricochet and Cesaro muck it up for the better part of 5-6 weeks now. And what are we really doing with Ricochet? I don't see Ricochet really getting a shot at a belt, or I don't really see Ricochet really moving out of what would be deemed this lower mid-card tier. He's just kind of there. But Ricochet is a new, young, up-and-coming face, but he's not doing anything. Seth Rollins, you talked about Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins should probably be the face of WWE. What's Seth Rollins doing? He's kind of stuck in this match, or these matches, where he's not really moving anything along, or it just kind of feels very stagnant. You look at SmackDown. Who's your big face on SmackDown? It's probably Daniel Bryan's your biggest face, maybe Kevin Owens, and your champion is Kofi Kingston. And Kofi Kingston's doing great work, but you said yourself you don't believe Kofi Kingston's a guy who can carry that brand. So we have these guys with these belts, and these guys with these belts, they should be your top tier talents.
The best way, we can describe it is Becky Lynch is the hottest she's ever been. I didn't
even think she's cooling off.
No, that's what I'm saying. She gets hot. She's white hot at WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. Then she cools off. And that's what they're doing, is they're not having these prolonged pushes where you could say, man, Steve Austin had a good 2-year run there, where every time he came out there, it was great bit, drinking the beer, having great matches, great bit, title wins. It seems like they got Becky Lynch there, and then they said, okay, let's de-emphasize her.
Yeah, they put a cooler on her.
Exactly.
And
that's what they're doing.
They take her from being white hot to, okay, here, we're just going to run you here. I don't understand why they do it, but I think this is more of an issue with booking and not having a long-term vision. And I totally understand guys get hurt, right? Because these guys work a ton.
I think I disagree with you. I think they have a long-term vision. It's just one that we disagree with. And their vision is, we're not going to let somebody get that hot so they can command big money.
That's a horrible long-term vision.
Yes, that's a horrible long-term vision. I think that's what John Cena is maybe hinting at, is that potentially that they're not going to be willing to put somebody up there and make them the face of a company. It's going to be a bunch of people, and they can only reach a certain level, and they have to be chosen. Because many of us would say, potentially speaking, Kofi Kingston could be hotter. You could have Braun Strowman could be hotter. Samoa Joe could be hotter. You could have the likes of a Cesaro be hotter prior to Raw. So it's just, you look at it and you say, WWE is handicapping what these wrestlers are capable of.
Can we both agree that WWE could have, or should have, probably 10 guys who should be the superstars, right?
Yeah.
Who should be that upper echelon? They have the talent. It's just WWE doesn't put them in the spot to where they're spotlighted, or they're the focus. And I know 10 guys sounds like a lot, right? But let's just rattle off some names real quick. Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns. You've got AJ Styles, Braun Strowman, Samoa Joe. All right, and now you want to start to stretch a little bit. Cesaro could be a guy. You've got a guy like Ricochet, who could be a guy. We haven't even started delving into tag teams yet, where you've got guys like the Revival, who are legitimate guys. You've got the Usos, who are legitimate guys. You've got Daniel Bryan, who's a legitimate guy. I mean, I'm now on 11. Do you know what I'm saying? So when you say 10 guys, it sounds like a lot, but it's really, really not. They just have to be booked properly.
So now you and I both probably were in the same boat. We get to Monday Night Raw and SmackDown, and the weather was nice in Michigan. Didn't really tune in that much.
It was not.
Obviously,
good.
After the first, what I did was I tuned in for the first segment of Raw. And I said, if they're going to go with a promo over 10 minutes, I'm out. And the first segment was a long-ass promo. And I said to myself, Raw used to be wrestling. It used to be Raw as War. It used to be good. Now it's just Raw's promos. Promo after promo after promo that, by and large, I don't want to see. So I was really impressed, and I texted you. I said, okay, I think the redeeming quality for Raw is going to be Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens. Good. It was a good match. I did tune back in at that point, but the rest of the show, I just had no investment in watching it. Yeah. That's where I was at.
I think you had, again, a la carte, right? You had a few spots where you're like, okay, cool, we can talk about this just because they were cool. Yeah. They were good, either good matches or they were decent spots. But other than that, Raw wasn't very good.
And then you look at it and you go, man, Cesaro, right when he gets to a point where he could potentially move up a notch, maybe from minor bit player to mid-card guy, he gets hurt.
Right.
And it looks to be severe, and we'll hear from you to tease it in news and notes. But that was an okay situation, but it seemed like from recapping Raw, you noted something with Samoa Joe.
Yeah, so like you said, you have Cesaro having his match, and it looks as though they might be doing something with Samoa Joe here. Samoa Joe was involved in a 6-man tag match. Samoa Joe getting lumped into the 6-man tag, which was a really decent tag match where a lot of the guys got to get their work in and got to do their spots. But I think the big thing coming out of it is they're going to give Samoa Joe a little bit of a run here. And whether that run is going to be with Ricochet to kind of start it off, I think it's going to end with Braun Strowman challenging for the U.S. Championship. So you're going to get a little bit of a run here, and I think it was a little bit of a sloppy way to kind of
introduce it.
Yeah, build this feud and kind of do this. But it was, again, a decent way to get good guys in and let them get their work in. The issue is you have a talent like Cesaro going to have to take a back seat. In the end, Ricochet will take a back seat. But I think the money will be on Samoa Joe and Braun Strowman, which I think is nice. I think that could be a really good match. Those are heavyweights. Those are guys who could kill each other if you let them. And it's going to be awesome. And it's for a secondary belt, which is fine. But that's how you build big names, is you let them battle each other for secondary belts.
Okay, now, in looking at the women's division, like we said, Becky Lynch kind of has cooled off. Lacey Evans obviously is the title contender for Becky Lynch's belt. Do you see Lacey Evans getting a push, and should Lacey Evans be the woman to take the belt off of Becky Lynch?
So I think right now Lacey Evans is the one who's getting the massive push. I feel like Becky Lynch is being put almost in a back seat so they can build Lacey Evans. And I think this is what WWE is going to do. It's going to be Becky Lynch is the face of it. She's going to sit down a little bit so we can build up Becky Lynch. And Becky Lynch will eventually be the one who will challenge. And I think what WWE is going to do, and I think this might be the right call, is we're going to see how hot Lacey Evans gets. If Lacey Evans gets hot enough to where they feel that she's redeemable, to where she can take off the belt from Becky Lynch, they will do it at that time. And this sounds like a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I think WWE, what they're doing is they're not necessarily ready to put all their eggs in the Lacey Evans basket. Becky Lynch is still too good. She's still, when you think of the women's division, you think of Becky Lynch, and by default, you think of Charlotte. You think of those two names. If Lacey Evans can get to that level where you start thinking, oh, okay, cool, Lacey Evans, Becky Lynch, Lacey Evans, Charlotte, Lacey Evans, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte, I think then they will then take the belt off of her. And I know it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, and I'm sorry to do that to you. It's just what they're doing with the women's division, which is unfair to the women's division. You know what I'm saying? When you've got talented girls like Alexa Bliss, Bayley, I think Nikki Cross will be good. I think one of the more interesting stories right now is the Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross storyline, but I'm not really sure what direction they're moving with that. I don't know what they're going to do with that. So until that kind of fills itself out and you're kind of like, oh, okay, I can see where they're going with this, I think Lacey Evans is going to be crammed down everybody's throat until she can redeem herself. And she had a pretty solid match this past week on, I believe it was on SmackDown.
Now, I find it interesting in that all the news you hear regarding the Revival is they were offered a massive amount of money for a lot of years, and they turned it down, yet they still win titles. It's kind of weird.
Well, you're right. It is weird. But would you not agree that the Usos, the Revival, and Zack Ryder, and Kurt Hawkins, look, is it the right idea to put the belt on these guys? I mean, probably. Look, as good as Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins were in this upcoming match or in this past match that we just had, I think the Revival are probably the story here, and they're probably the way to go. And that being said, it's probably them versus the Usos is the way to go here. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think this is the direction to take it. And look, the story is always in the chase, not necessarily in who has the belt, but it's in the chase. So do we let the Usos then chase the Revival, who don't necessarily want to be there? I think it's been made blatantly obvious that the Revival want out of WWE. So you let the Usos chase them and then get their belt, and then the Revival can go on their way.
But here's the funny part with that is that you're creating stars that are going to leave your company.
You're right.
So when you give them the belt, it's very weird.
You're right. But again, this is This is WWE and short-sighted booking that WWE has done. Where's that long-term booking? Where is their long-term role? They've done nothing but put the Revival in a weird spot where the Revival have to be made fun of by the Usos, right? And then we give the belt to Zack Ryder and to Kurt Hawkins, and Zack Ryder is a guy who probably should have been a star 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and it just WWE short-sighted booking really put the kibosh on him and never really let him blossom and let him bloom. So you give these guys the belt, they do their thing, they do actually a really good job with the tag belts, but WWE doesn't really give them the push that they need to be what they need them to be as the tag team champions. So then now you have this side story going on with the Revival. You're right. Again, this is a bad way for WWE to do business, but hey, WWE does business.
Now turning to SmackDown and carrying over from Super Showdown, where you have Shane McMahon win, using Drew McIntyre to defeat Roman Reigns. Now you go over to SmackDown, and again, we get a lot more Shane McMahon. It's too much, don't you think?
Oh, way too much Shane McMahon. Hey, look, you have Shane McMahon, a large segment on Monday. Now you have Shane McMahon, who is basically the first hour on Tuesday. I mean, how much Shane McMahon do we really need here? I like the fact that you have a guy like Drew McIntyre who is involved with a guy like Shane McMahon. Great. That's fantastic. But when Shane McMahon starts to overshadow the best wrestler in the bunch in Drew McIntyre, it's a little bit too much. At some point, Drew McIntyre needs to be a heel, right? I think his best work will be done as a heel. This is like Bobby Roode. By the way, where has Bobby Roode been? Anybody seen Bobby Roode? Bobby Roode is great. He does his best work as a heel. They turned him face. It was bad. It didn't really work. They then turned him heel. Then he disappeared. Where'd he go? All right, nobody knows. At some point, Drew McIntyre will have to turn heel on Shane McMahon, right? To get away from him. So, Drew McIntyre does his best work as a heel. How does he turn heel on Shane McMahon, who's the ultimate heel? Do you know what I'm saying? It becomes very convoluted, very confusing. So you're going to have a heel turn heel on the heel. So then he's a face? What are we doing here? It's way too much Shane McMahon. It's way too convoluted. You've got way too much going on here. You need less Shane McMahon, more Drew McIntyre. I don't understand where this is necessarily going. And
you have a Miz TV where you could highlight the Miz, and it doesn't happen.
Exactly. It's another spot where we're going to beat up the Miz, and we're gonna accentuate the Miz on Monday and on Tuesday, just to have him get beat up on Tuesday by, again, Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre, just so Shane McMahon can get carried out of the arena on Drew McIntyre's shoulders. Didn't make a lot of sense. I think, honestly, the redeeming quality of SmackDown was two things. I think you got to see funny bits by R-Truth, because I think at this point, R-Truth's 24/7 bits are very, very funny. I think he is a gregarious guy who makes everybody laugh. Even the guys who he's wrestling against, I think they legitimately care about him and they like him. And I think that's...
And he's genuinely funny.
He is. He's genuinely a funny guy. And I think that's some of the best programming WWE has done in a long time. You had that, and then you had the return of Big E side with the New Day. I think those were the two big storylines here. And I think SmackDown itself, that second hour, and thank God it's only 2 hours, I think that second hour really, really kind of took off. You had Nikki Cross and Bayley have a decent match. It was a good women's match. Bayley ends up winning. That then leads into Aleister Black's promo, which was liquid nitrogen. It was hot fire. It cut a great promo, and you talked about how much you loved it. This was your highlight of SmackDown.
And that's what everyone has been kind of clamoring for, is a promo that people can get into, that people can respect, because what is everybody saying? The promos are scripted. A lot of the performers are just kind of going through the motion, not delivering it well. Well, Aleister Black can deliver a promo. So sometimes you do have to work hard and convince the writers in the back to give you something good. And sometimes you get something good and you deliver it with passion. And with Aleister Black, the best thing you could state about that promo is it left you really wanting to understand, okay, who's going to take that challenge? Who's going to be next? Because I think Aleister Black thrives on these feuds, and he's a good guy, and I think that hopefully, is my confidence level high that his character is going to develop? No, but I do think, at least in his early run, it's been successful, and we kind of hope that he can progress into somebody that can at least be entertaining week in, week out. And hey, if you're going to have that many promos, at least be the best one. I think he was the best promo of the week.
I agree with you 110%. I want to talk about Aleister Black for a quick minute. So Aleister Black and Zelina Vega, if you know it or you don't know it, they're married. They're a married couple. I follow Zelina Vega on Instagram. She does a lot of really good work on Instagram. And she and he do a lot of really good work on Instagram where they try to do little match segments, they do little bits, they do little things. Recently, she did a match segment where they were just working in the ring. It's all it was. It was just them two working in the ring. It was him working her, her working him. It was awesome. I think he needs to kind of go on his own and do his own thing, but Zelina Vega does a great job with Andrade. At some point with the women's revolution, right, there's a nice way to kind of wrap all this together. You take Zelina Vega, let her be the centerpiece, let her be almost like the $1 Million Man used to be. Let her be the heavy where she is the mouthpiece for Andrade, and let her build her own little cult. With
Aleister Black.
Exactly. Where she incorporates Aleister Black. She has Andrade. She's the mouthpiece, kind of like the $1 Million Man was.
A little faction for Zelina Vega.
And she could kind of do her own thing. And these guys can get, I don't want to say the rub. She kind of gets the rub off these guys doing basically the heavy work. But she's basically their bumping manager. You know what I'm saying? And they get to get built up. And at some point, you put belts on these guys and you let them all get built up. Whether it be a crossover on Raw and SmackDown, because, look, the wild card's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's what it's going to be. It's how it's going to be. You can let her develop her faction on both Raw and on SmackDown and let them cross over.
So based on what you've read and what you understand, which show was better?
I think SmackDown was better, especially because the second half of the show kind of saved it. You had a decent half with the New Day.
Dolph Ziggler is great always.
Yeah, Kevin Owens is awesome. Sami Zayn is really good. So I'm going to give it, I think SmackDown was better.
Deal.
Myself.
I can agree.
All right, so SmackDown continues its run, 56 to Raw's 26.5 and a no credits. I want to talk about AEW. So Fyter Fest is coming up, and there was a report that they're giving it away. All right, so they're not going to charge you. They just charged you $50 for their recent pay-per-view, which was outstanding. So this is going to be another pay-per-view, but they're giving it away to you this time. So it's almost like you're getting 2 for 1 is kind of how I'm looking at it. But this is one I think where it's going to be a little bit broader to maybe bring more people in because, again, you just had the one. So now everybody's talking about this. It was awesome. You now have Fyter Fest that's going to be given away for free. And I think it's a good idea because this then helps catapult you towards your television that's going to be taking place in October. You don't think this is a good idea?
From a pure business standpoint, no. Now, what was the big commentary when Double or Nothing happened? It was the price of the pay-per-view being $50. Now, the idea is you swung from one pendulum, 50, which probably is a little bit too much, which I don't think because of the marketplace, because WWE has all their programming for $10, which is so worth it. Even though Raw and SmackDown are garbage, if you just don't watch Raw and SmackDown and just live on the network, you're a happy wrestling fan. And I look at it and I say, okay, from a business standpoint, you just got to find the happy medium. And I think the happy medium is anywhere between $10 and $20. That's the happy medium in that you did cost yourself money because if they put it out for $14.99 or $17.99 or anywhere in there, if they did it for $20, it's reasonable. So you cost yourself money because if they did 100,000 pay-per-view buys, you probably could get 50,000 people to spend $10. So you cost yourself money. So in my eyes, it's a bad idea. I understand why they do it. You get more attention. You get, obviously to put some quality matches and to continue that momentum. But from a pure business standpoint, I just think that you swung the pendulum a little too far the other way. You can make it $10. I would have watched it. If you would have said AEW Fyter Fest $10 and you got Jon Moxley's first match, I'm watching. I'd pay for it. But zero, free, I understand there's going to be some great intrinsic value in that. But from a pure business standpoint, they could have probably charged a little bit.
Do you think AEW, okay, so I know nobody wants to say AEW's made a mistake, especially early on, especially with what they had with that first pay-per-view. Do you think we're kind of seeing a small slip up here? So AEW has their first pay-per-view. It's great. Everybody loves it. Nobody wants to say a bad thing about it. But then you follow it up with a free one. Why not do something where you have double or nothing, go for, like you said, maybe $15, $20. Then follow that up with Fyter Fest for maybe $15, $10, right? I mean, instead you're turning around charging $50 and now you're giving away a free one. It almost seems like, hey, we're going to hit you in the face with this. It was awesome, though. It was really, really good. Everybody talked about it. But if you'd have did it for a little bit less and then followed it up with one for maybe a little bit less than that, just to kind of build, just to kind of keep
meaning that
white hot.
Yeah, you could have made more money if you would have made double or nothing $40 and then this one $20. You might have had more buys along the way. Yeah, it's a little misstep business wise.
Make it a little bit more white hot.
But remember,
so that way when television comes around in October,
but remember
you're still
too,
white hot.
These guys are strong business people and they're making a killing on these T-shirts.
They are.
John Moxley, Chris Jericho, the Young Bucks, Cody, Dustin. You know, a lot of people are joking around. It's a T-shirt company, but they are making a killing on these T-shirts, bro.
Madness of a T-shirt company,
man. Right?
It's absolutely crazy. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with AEW.
Yeah.
I want to go back in time now. I want to do our quick review of wrestling history.
Love it.
On July 6, 1998,
Memory
WCW Nitro, their main event was Hollywood Hogan versus Bill Goldberg. So here's the build. Goldberg enters this match riding a ridiculous win streak. It was like 1 billion in a row, all right? He hadn't lost. Hogan was leading the NWO, which wasn't dropping the belt to anyone. They were on top. Hogan and his cronies were running amok. They kept beating dudes by interference. It was absolutely nuts. They had their own referee at the time. It was absolutely crazy. This was a titanic clash of good versus evil. You had Goldberg representing WCW, and they were the last bastion. He was the last bastion of hope. He was the last guy who could possibly take down Hollywood Hogan and save WCW. Hogan was an egomaniac at this point. It was crazy. There was talks about it killing WCW, even though WCW was riding a monster high. This match took place in Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia was Goldberg's hometown. He was a massive star. He was no bigger of a star than this night where he was catapulted in this 8-minute match. That's all it was. It was an 8-minute match that took place at the very, very end of WCW Monday Nitro. Numerous times throughout the match, Tony Schiavone would say, we're going to keep this match. We're not going anywhere. We're staying right here. We're not leaving. Mind you, the match took place. I believe Nitro ran at 11 o'clock. It ended at 11. This match started taking place, I think, at like 10:58. So when they said it wasn't going anywhere, it wasn't going anywhere. They were staying here. So you know it wasn't going to be a long match. It was going to be a short match. Look, this match pitted the power of Bill Goldberg, because that's what he was. He was a powerhouse. The guy was not very good in the ring wrestling, versus the cunning and the guile of Hulk Hogan, who would use shortcuts and cheap shots to try to retain the belt. Goldberg at one point would no sell, getting whipped with one of Hogan's lifting belts. Honestly, this match turned around on 2 leg drops and DDP and Karl Malone coming down to the ring.
Karl Malone's attempt at the diamond cutter was kind of funny. He like sets it up so slow. It was kind of funny. You remember that part?
Yes.
Okay, now the match, in reviewing it, for an 8-minute match, the crowd was going ape shit.
Bonkers.
Dude, the match setup was this.
Throwing shit in the ring.
Dude, the match setup, I was like, wow, this is the most cheered, awful match ever. It was headlock. It was, first Goldberg did a headlock, then Hogan did a side headlock, and then they basically just kind of did a bunch of, grapples.
It was power move, stop, roll out to the ring.
2-minute break.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this match? It is awful.
But the crowd was so hot for it.
Yes. The crowd was into it because everybody wanted to see the coronation of Bill Goldberg. And that's how you do psychology, in that Hogan and Goldberg at the time weren't great wrestlers, but they put on a match that people wanted to at least get into, meaning that Hogan took advantage, got some stuff in, and hey, Hogan was working. He was going into the ropes. He threw Goldberg outside a little bit. They did some work through Goldberg's head into the rail there. So it was interesting in that it was like, okay, this match is like so hyped up, but could have been an opener in terms of the match quality. But when you're a wrestler, there's another way to get over, which is to have the crowd absolutely love you. And the crowd in of itself can make a match awesome. So that's why, in particular, we complained about Super Showdown. The crowd wasn't into some great matches. I mean, Andrade and Finn Balor were tearing the house down, flipping, doing everything, and the crowd was just like, this is awesome. And it was nothing. It was not there. But this match, obviously, Hogan's distracted, and then you hit the spear and the jackhammer executed. And that iconic moment where Goldberg perfectly looks into the camera, does his finger wag there, and delivers the jackhammer, 1, 2, 3. And it was a perfect culmination of emotion and a true passing of the torch from Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, to Goldberg.
It was an incredible match.
A D match, but A in terms of delivery.
Okay, so this match, okay, this was the epitome of WCW, okay,
Yes.
for a couple different reasons. All right, one, it was an awesome moment. I remember watching it. I remember just bouncing out off my couch, staying up till 11 o'clock at night. I was in high school at the time, just absolutely losing my shit because it did feel like a passing of the torch. The good guy won, right? You had to find a way to stymie what was NWO. It was a train that was just running amok and just killing everything and everybody. When I say killing, I meant killing. It was in quotations, but they were killing everybody. And you kept tuning in because you're like, who's going to stop WC or who's going to stop NWO? This was the one that stopped it, right? 2, this was incredibly short-sighted by WCW. This helped spur the downfall that would be WCW 3 years later as it was sold to WWE. That quarter hour drew a 6.91 TV rating. SmackDown would need 4 weeks straight to equal that now. All right, let that sink in. At least 4 weeks straight to try to come close to that. Raw would need 3.5 weeks straight of that to make that rating right now. That's how bad today's current product is, but how hot this show was. Just the quarter hour, not the whole show, the quarter hour, the 15 minutes. Let that sink in, guys. That's nuts. Absolutely bananas. All right. It was estimated that this match could have drew over $7 million. Instead, WCW gave it away for free.
I think business-wise, it was a mistake. But at the same time, you elevated Goldberg by putting it on free television. So I will not begrudge them. But in terms of, again, pure business, yeah, you could have, and the other way of looking at it, you could have had this drawn out a lot more. You could have ran stories, more promos. You could have extended this out. You could have delayed the gratification. And I think by putting it on free TV, it net was a mistake. Because you could have made more. You could have built it out to something where it was unbelievable.
This gives me pause.
$7 million.
Gives me pause when we talk about AEW doing what they did with Double or Nothing.
Yeah, but there's not a match yet on Fyter Fest that you're like, oh my God, you're going to give away.
You're right. You're right. But you have to take pause because you have something like this take place. All right. And then you're going to turn around, you're going to give away Fyter Fest for free after charging the $50 for Double or Nothing. It just, I want AEW to succeed so bad. I really, really do. But you have to stop and pause sometimes to think, like, please don't give us WCW.
Yeah.
Just don't be WCW. All right, you want news and notes?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes.
All right, talking about Cesaro. He avoided a serious injury on Monday during his 6-man tag match. At the end of the match, you could see him grabbing his leg. He was helped to the back by 2 referees. Turns out he avoided major injury. No huge scare here. Everything's going to be okay. Batista has joined in on the WWE creative bashing during an interview with Ryan Satin. He said, it was a nightmare to me the last time I was there, which was in 2014. It seemed like it was becoming worse. I feel like they don't have a clear vision, a long-term vision. Everything is very week to week. It doesn't seem like they stick to very much, like everything is planned. More hype for AEW. AEW All Out tickets will go on sale this Friday at noon Eastern, 11 Central. Cody Rhodes said the most expensive ticket will be $190. The least expensive will be $30.
Get by your computer today, noon. You better hurry up because it's probably going to go out fast. It's going to be sold out.
Trying to get everybody in the arena. Also at Fyter Fest, it's been announced the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega will take on the Lucha Brothers and a mysterious partner.
Ooh.
So here's your build, all right? So trying to get everybody to tune into Fyter Fest. This looks like this might be the main events or one of the main events. This is trying to build and capitalize off of everything that took place the previous pay-per-view. How much you want to bet that mysterious partner is Johnny Moxley?
Oh, it could be.
What do you want to think?
I thought that he had a match at Fyter Fest. No.
Oh, he does. You're right. He does. He's taking on Joey Janela. I lied. You're right. It won't be him. That's interesting.
Who's it going to be?
You're right.
Intrigue, so tune in to streaming. Find out.
That's right. He's taking on Joey Janela. Earlier this week, Dana White confirmed that Brock Lesnar is done with UFC, so he's now WWE's headache.
Perfect use of leveraging all the way around. WWE is now the home for Brock Lesnar, and did you see the number of times he wrestled in 2018?
It's like
eight
14?
times. Eight times.
times. I gave him too much credit.
I think 8 times.
Holy cow.
That work rate, man, to get paid that much money. It's good work if you can get it.
Like, if you can do that, that's great. That's
Exactly.
Good job. But WWE, come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. Just like John Moxley said, you're paying this guy a boatload of money, really not to have much impact and to ruin your company.
Yeah.
Good podcast, sir. I want to thank everybody that listens, downloads. If you've enjoyed the conversation, if you're a big, huge wrestling fan, go download Flick. It's a great application during the major events, during Super Showdown, during Stomping Ground that's going to take place soon. We're going to chat all the way through, and Flick is a great application. I go there. Adam goes there. A lot of wrestling fans go there to chat during events. It's a large group chat, and it's super easy and very user-friendly. I wouldn't be on there if it wasn't super easy. Detroit Sports' newest headquarters is Flick. All you got to do is go to our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, click on the invite link, and boom, you're joined in the group. And if you already are a member of Flick, if you already have the application and you want to join the group, all you got to do is hit the plus sign and use all lowercase DSP, and you're in the group, and it's really fun, and we're growing a huge, large community, and one where you can create your own topics, and if you're a big wrestling fan and you want to talk about Fyter Fest or anything associated with it, definitely get on there and make your own topics. It's great because you're in control of it. It's a really great user-friendly application. We recommend highly that you use Flick. And also support Dennis Farrell and the Wrestling Perspective podcast. You can follow Dennis on Twitter at Dennis77Farrell, a great podcast, which also airs on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. See everybody next week for the next edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.